one final signee today. We've already discussed him in previous weeks, so if you want in-depth analysis on one Cameron Martinez, check out our previous shows. But maybe one final thought, if you guys have anything to say on Cameron Martinez and his future as a Buckeye, Steve.
No, I just think that was a case, again, where he wanted to become comfortable with Kerry Combs. And obviously what we heard from Ryan Day was very telling, is that they recognize that he has some tremendous benefit with the football in his hand. And so he will be also repping on the offensive side of the ball when he arrives in the fall. So he will probably be there in June for summer conditioning and all that with the other regular timed enrollees from this class, the other 11 guys who signed with Ohio State in this cycle, 25 guys total. And that was some new news that we were not aware of, that, he's going to come in with an eye on playing on defense, but he's also going to be given a shot to play a little bit on offense as well, because he was tremendous, obviously, in earning Michigan State Football Player of the Year award as primarily a running quarterback. So they're going to see if there's some ways they could feature him. I talked to one of the reporters I was there with. I said, it's kind of reminiscent of the Ted Ginn Jr. situation to me, way back when they brought him in originally on defense. And for the first 3 or 4 games of his freshman year, he hardly saw any time at wide receiver. And then that 2014 kind of sputtered there early in the season, and they moved him over to his rightful place on offense, and the rest, as they say, was history, because they caught fire the second half of the 2004 season and then won the Big Ten the next 2 seasons with Ted Ginn Jr. over on offense. And I'm not going to purport to say that Cam Martinez is going to have the same type of impact as Ted Ginn Jr. did in the mid-2000s, but it is somewhat of a similar path, that he's going to start out his OSU career primarily on offense, with an eye that he will also play some on defense or start out his career on defense and also play a little bit over on offense as well.
Ted Ginn, who is remarkably still playing in the NFL and playing well.
Yeah, what I found interesting, as Steve said about Cameron, he's a guy who's rushed for almost 7,000 yards in high school, rushed for like 6,500 yards, and has put up over 100 touchdowns, and has a 9-minute senior highlight tape of just touchdowns. And so when you've got that and you don't at least give him a look on offense, I think you're mistaken there. So special teams as well, he'll get a look at. And I know he came out yesterday and said he'd like to start out on defense. But I asked Ryan Day on Wednesday, they've got to replace KJ Hill in that H-back, in that slot, and they don't really have anybody that is proven. So they're going to put a bunch of guys there and see who comes out of there. And, maybe that's why Cameron Martinez gets a look there initially. He was asked if could Cameron Martinez end up at running back. And he said, maybe he ends up there as well. Kerry Combs, new defensive coordinator, said that on defense, he'd start out as an outside corner, because that's where all of the new guys start out. And then if they can't play there, they move him inside to the slot corner. He can't play there, then you move him back to safety. So he's going to be maybe one of the busier guys. And it's a rare athlete that can come in and, play all, every single offense, defense, and special teams. Sometimes you have a guy who maybe floats from one position to the other on the same side of the ball, but we'll see how he does on both sides of the ball. And you look at his highlights, and he's got some crazy moves and things like that. I still wonder about his top end speed, but I'm sure they'll get that figured out.
MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football, bringing these guys on the line to talk Ohio State football each and every week. That's Tony Gerdeman of the Ozone and Steve Hellwagon from Bucknuts talking Ohio State football. And we thank Steve each and every week for posting these videos on Bucknuts on 247 Sports. So the class is signed and sealed and ready to go, and many of these players already on campus. It's, again, the number 1 class in the Big Ten, number 5 overall, according to the 247 Sports composite. It seems as though the number of guys that set up their high school career in order to reach campus in January grows and grows and grows for all the major programs each and every year, as people are trying to, as players, student athletes are preparing themselves to make an impact and get that head start in the fall, or in this case, probably the statement that would be more accurate is not fall behind by just arriving on campus in June or July. And you guys had a chance to talk to some of the early enrollees yesterday, Steve. What were some of the conversations that stood out for you?
Very interesting. We got to talk to all 14 of the early enrolling freshmen, which is the largest number of incoming freshmen they've ever had at one time, which has created some interesting things for them to have to deal with. They are basically a lot of times their own group that gets in there at 6 in the morning to do workouts. And so that they're kind of acclimating them in that regard, and then we'll mix them in, sprinkle them in as time goes on with some of the older guys, and it really gives them a schedule that is kind of repetitive day after day. This is your routine. And I think that you look at it, and I look at it and I just say that they are being given every chance to come in, compete right away. Will be involved in spring football. Yeah, the two quarterbacks, we got to talk to them, Jack Miller and CJ Stroud. And of course, this is the year 2020 with the transfer portal and history. I mean, Matthew Baldwin, he got his nose in a snit a year ago at this time that they were bringing in Justin Fields. And here, everyone thought he'll be content to be the backup. He'll be just fine with a guy coming in over him. And he wasn't content. He wasn't just fine with it. He transferred to TCU. So, we're living in the real world here. And these guys had what, we can only take at face value or honest answers that, hey, I'm here to compete. CJ Stroud was interesting. He said to me that I believe in my heart I'm going to have a great college football career. I think Jack can have a great college football career, but it leaves it wide open, which one of them is going to be the guy at Ohio State for the long haul. So, and which one of them is probably, if push comes to shove, going to move on to fulfill that thought that they're both going to be great college football quarterbacks. So I don't know. There's a lot of different ways to look at it, but as of yesterday, everything seemed very positive. CJ Stroud said that he and Jack Miller have become very good friends. They watched the Super Bowl together. I'm sure that had to be interesting to watch some of the quarterback play in that game and to get their thoughts, I guess, as that game was progressing. But at any rate, so far so good. Everybody's on the same page, and there weren't any attitudes, that's for sure. We talked to Julian Fleming, the nation's number 2, 3, 4 prospect, number 1 wide receiver. And he said, my 5 stars don't seem to get me too much over here. I'm kind of on an island out here now at Ohio State, and you have to do your work every day, and that stuff doesn't really get you very far. So all the comments, to my way of thinking, were just about what you thought you would get from these guys their first time going through this ringer.
The Julian Fleming thing, and I'm writing about this right now. The 4 freshman receivers who are relying on a group of veteran receivers who really haven't done much at Ohio State. When Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson are the 2 most productive players. Olave is going to be a junior and Garrett Wilson is going to be a sophomore, and yet the freshmen are still being brought along through these workouts by a 4th-year guy, Jalen Harris, who has 2 or 3 career receptions. CJ Saunders, who didn't play last year, who's a 6th-year guy who may or may not be on the team in the fall. Cameron Babb, who has missed his first 2 seasons with ACL injuries. You've got all of these guys who have yet to really do anything on the field, but they're still leading in their own way. And I'll be interested because these are also all guys who are trying not to get bypassed in the spring. These 4 receivers coming in to take everybody's jobs, and they're being helped and not coddled, but just helped along the way through these workouts by the veterans who, their jobs are in jeopardy. Not Garrett Wilson, not Chris Olave. Obviously, those guys are going to continue to do well. Talking to Jack Miller, the quarterback, I asked him, because when you come in with another quarterback, these 2 quarterbacks are tied together forever. And so I said, when did the competition start for you? He said, as soon as we got to Columbus. They compete in everything, and you try to outlast your teammates. You try to look like the best person out there, And then I asked Corey Dennis, the new quarterbacks coach, about it. And he's like, well, right now, I don't think they're really competing against each other. They're just competing against themselves because this is the first time they're doing stuff like this. And you're trying to remain afloat. And that's one of the things G. Scott, one of the receivers, said. It's sink or swim. They throw you out in the water and you have to decide if you want to swim. And the good news is that they're all swimming. They've got 14 guys there to rely on. So they're all going through it together. And that just brings them together even more. And it'll be interesting to see how they continue to bond. I mean, these receivers talk about, like they've almost been together already for a year because they've been through so much just in these last few weeks, just experiencing these things. And you're talking about the future of the Ohio State passing game in this class, in this winter. And, Ryan Day told me, said all of these receivers can be in the 2 deep. Any of these freshmen can be in the 2 deep because it's not a deep group of proven guys. So, we'll see how it shakes out this winter, but there's some guys already, like G. Scott in the receiver room is kind of one of the leaders, and Court Williams, a defensive back, linebacker. Ryan Day said he's going to be a captain eventually. And so there's already some guys emerging just in the workouts.